Oh, we take a stroll down memory lane. See, Steve Spurrier and Dabo Swinney. This isn't a misprint. In fact, South Carolina, Clemson? But wait, that doesn't look like today. Huh, it's not today, but it's eerily similar. In fact, what's this? Oh, is this Michigan? Is this Ohio State? Yes, but it's not the version of either of these teams that we're looking at. Why on God's green earth are we starting this show with highlights from 2011? Why? Because 11 years ago today was the last time that Ohio State and Clemson lost in the same day, and it was to the same two teams. History has officially repeated itself in a chaotic Saturday of college football. It's College Football Show. He's AJ McCarron. I'm Jason Fitz. And holy you know what, if you came into the weekend still stuffed and you found your stretchy pants and you realize that like nothing fits and you're just going to sit there and you're going to hoss out on some football, today gave you all the snacks, all the appetizers, and all the desserts because it's been chaos.
Absolute chaos. And I mean, there's still some, games that could cause chaos going on right now, later tonight. So it's been an interesting day, to say the least.
Yeah, over the course of the next hour, we're going to show you some of the games that are going on. We're going to get you caught up and ready for the games tonight. But we start with the highlights from the action today, and nothing was bigger than the game. We all know what's at stake when you've got Ohio State, Michigan in any year. But this year particularly, we're talking playoffs. We picked this one up. C.J. Stroud drops back, just throws a
Beautiful
dime there to Buka. Yeah, you love that pass, right? Then we turn it around here.
That's what hurt them all day. Phil.
Michigan just absolutely presses the turbo button. Ohio State incapable of making the tackle. 69 yards to the house. Michigan ties it up at 10 apiece. Now J.J. McCarthy launches it. Again, there's a theme here, and the theme was big plays that Ohio State couldn't stop. That's a 75-yard touchdown. Michigan takes their first lead.
Big plays to Cornelius Johnson, too. That's back-to-back possessions right there that he had big touchdowns on.
C.J. Stroud trying to do the same for Ohio State.
Beautiful ball.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful throw. Marvin Harrison Jr. with the pick, with the touchdown catch. We're pretty used to that. Beautiful dive into the end zone. Buckeyes back on top, 20-17. McCarthy with the fake, steps up, and what do you know? Another big play, this time to Colston Loveland. Flash into the end zone, 24-20. Now, how about a little jump pass? Oh, Kobe! You scream Kobe when you do that because it worked. Michigan, a few plays later, takes the 31-20 lead with J.J. McCarthy getting in with the keeper. Ohio State fans not happy. How about just a big run? Donovan Edwards takes the handoff.
Keep going.
I mean, in a game where Blake Corum saw 2 touches, it didn't matter in the second half particularly. That made it 38-23 late.
This is a bad decision right here.
Trying to make a play.
If anything, as a quarterback, you toss it overhand. Don't toss it underhand. You got more control.
And what's that lead to? Not much longer. Donovan Edwards again, just absolutely flying. Michigan wins it 45-23 in Columbus. An absolute thrashing, a butt kicking, a statement win where Michigan was without their number one player, Blake Corum. And I thought that it was going to be a huge impact to the game. And instead, J.J. McCarthy came out and just found huge play after huge play, AJ.
Well, the thing is, I don't know if it's so much. Listen, Michigan deserves their credit, right? But Ohio State, what are we doing? Ohio State's defense was not even on the field today for at least the last 3 quarters.
Well, I'll give you a stat on that, actually, because I think what you're saying really matters here. J.J. McCarthy came in with a completion rate of 71% versus zone, 57% versus man. As a result, Ohio State came out and ran a ton of man defense, thinking that they were going to be able to fool them, and it looked like they were outmatched the entire way.
I mean, if you look at 2 of J.J. McCarthy's out of his 3 touchdown passes, I believe, or
it was 3 or 4. But
yeah, but 2 of them especially. He had Cornelius Johnson on the post corner, or I should say the corner post that we saw, and then he hits the tight end. On both of those, there was nobody within 5 yards. On the one to Johnson, the second one to Johnson, there was nobody within 10 to 15 yards of him. And then the tight end had a 5 to 7 yard gap on the closest defender to him. So, it wasn't like, all right, they made J.J. McCarthy have some big-time throws in small windows. Like, these dudes were running wide open. Wide open.
That speaks at some point to game plan because the secondary looked confused. They were bumping into each other all over the place. They were falling. And this is substantial to me. Michigan scored 45 today. That's tied for the Wolverines' third most ever in a single game against the Buckeyes in a series. The first team since 2004 to have 3 touchdowns of 70 or more yards in a game against an AP-ranked opponent. They had 10 rushing yards in the first half, 242 rushing yards in the second half. Everything Ohio State did was wrong in this game.
Well, yeah, I mean, and especially, those stats are padded a little bit because they had the 2 big runs towards the end. But, like, Ohio State's defense, I just can't get over it. Like, I'm mind blown watching that game today. All right, you see Blake Corum get his first carry. They had a perfect view, and it was almost like the umpire about the linebacker depth. And he had a camera on, and you can see Blake Corum get the handoff and go to cut, and it just wasn't there. Like, he had a huge knee brace on. You could tell something's wrong with his knee. MCL, something's going on. But it was like Michigan didn't miss a beat after that. Like, they struggled for just, a short period of time, and then they just had big plays. And dudes were running wide open, and Ohio State couldn't tackle. I mean, they absolutely blew their chance.
Okay, Ohio State. Let's hang out for a second. Let's have a conversation, Ohio State. I want you to see a graphic. Our amazing team put this together. The last time Michigan won in Columbus, Ryan Day was starting quarterback at University of New Hampshire. Harbaugh was playing for the Chargers. Brady hadn't played in the NFL yet. C.J. Stroud wasn't even born. Michigan lost 9 straight to Ohio State. Ohio State, we need to have a conversation here because the standard is the standard. And the more players that I work with that have been part of excellent programs, they always tell me the same thing. AJ has been part of that conversation, that the way you do anything is the way you do everything. At some point, there is an exception. There's an understanding of excellence. Ohio State has not been good enough. I don't care how many damn games you win. You are judged by what you do against Michigan, and today you failed. Ryan Day, today you failed, and yet again you failed. And if you look at the record for Ohio State and the way they recruit and what's expected of this program, if it was Michigan, if Harbaugh had laid the same egg 2 years in a row that Ryan Day and Ohio State have laid in this matchup, we would be screaming for Harbaugh's job. It's okay to say that Ryan Day has been successful against a bunch of cupcakes. It's also okay to say that that is not what the standard is for Ohio State. You blew your chance at the college football playoff. You blew your chance at a national championship, and you did it with a quarterback that could end up being the #1 pick in the draft next year, and wide receivers all over the place that are going to play on Sunday. You're wasting your talent if you can't even be competitive against Michigan. This was a disgrace for this effort in the game. They were outcoached, they were outplayed top to bottom, and that is not what Ohio State's supposed to do. That's all I got to say, AJ. I'm just saying, okay, now that I got that off my chest, don't at me, Columbus fans. I know you're all in your fields. I don't mean to pile on. Let's go to the next team in the action. One team did not disappoint, although they did start slowly. Georgia taking on Georgia Tech in what we're supposed to convince you is a rivalry because it plays on this day, and that's about the only reason. Stetson Bennett drops back there, flings it in. Beautiful touchdown. Makes it 10.
It was a really good catch.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And then, what do you know? Why don't you just hit, Brock Bowers?
Unbelievable catch right here.
2 straight touchdowns where it's like, whoo, heck of an effort by the receiver. Picking it up now. Kendall Milton takes the handoff. Says, hey, we like running it too. Just straight up the gut. Making it look easy. That extends their lead. This game was tight for a minute, and everybody got a little bit curious the way this college football season has gone. But Georgia absolutely rolls. They're going to wait for LSU in the SEC championship game, and they do it by way of a 37-14 thrashing of Georgia Tech. Not a big surprise, but AJ, let me give you this stat. This is the 5th time in the last 2 years Georgia has been held to 10 or fewer points in the first half. 10 or fewer in the first half in the last 2 years. 5th time, they're 5-0 in those games. Like, it feels like all you do is piss them off when you hold them down in the first half.
100%. The thing that worries me about Georgia, right, is they played to their competition. And I've said this most of the year. Now, listen, they're the best team in the country. They haven't missed a beat, but they struggled at home against Kent State earlier in the year. You went on the road, which I've said is a tough place to play in Missouri, but you struggled there. You got away with that one.
You've been consistent with that all year.
Yeah. Then you struggle versus a Kentucky team who has gotten worse, who Fitz went off against in one of those little rants like he just did for Ohio State a couple weeks ago. And then you struggle for the first half today bad against Georgia Tech. Like, Kirby's got to find a way to get these guys going out of the gate. As soon as you run out of the gate, we are on fire. You can't wait till halftime. The only good thing and positive for Georgia and their fans is Georgia has to play nothing but top teams from here on out. You got LSU coming up in the SEC championship game. And then you're going to make the playoffs, most likely, I would say 99% chance. And you're going to have the top 4 teams in the country then. So if you're Georgia, you got to find a way to keep this thing going, but start faster.
I love what you said there because it speaks to the version of Georgia we've seen. Week 1, the opening game against Oregon, 49-3 thrashing that has changed the way we see Oregon all year. I would argue it's also changed the way we've been viewing Georgia all year because we've forgiven some of the struggles across the course of the season. And I'm looking at some of these results and thinking back on some of these games that were closer than they needed to be at different times.
Right.
If you're Georgia, you're right. You're going to be playing the best of the best. But if you're Georgia, you better bring it against the best of the best because we just saw Michigan shorthanded do what they did to Ohio State. That Michigan team can beat Georgia the way Georgia played today. I don't care how talented they are.
Oh, 100%. I mean, now the only good thing is, like you said, and like we've been saying, is Georgia, when they play a top team, they come out on fire.
Yeah.
And it's like they realize, hey, we can't have any slow starts. But when they don't, for whatever reason, they seem to just struggle out of the gate. But listen, they're the best team in the country right now, and I'm excited to watch them play next week.
Before we move on, this is my way of telling everybody behind the scenes, not moving on quite yet. Do you want to give us a big roll tide? I mean, the Iron Bowl just went final, 49-27. Alabama wins. You just give it to me.
Roll Tide!
Oh God,
let's go, baby.
I'll keep you updated also on the action that's just underway. LSU, Texas A&M, we'll keep you updated on that. And we've got right now a huge college football playoff implication outcome as Oregon is trailing Oregon State late in the football game. We'll make sure you're caught up on all of that. But we had one team find themselves absolutely eliminated from the college football playoff conversation. We started by telling you this. The first time in 11 years we saw Ohio State and Clemson lose. Look at this. Spencer Rattler handing it off to Bell, in for the score. Gamecocks trimmed the deficit to 23-21. Clemson here. Will Shipley doing what Will Shipley does.
I mean, he's their whole offense.
I love watching him run.
Yeah.
It's electric. Talk about wasted talent. He's just absolutely been great. Spencer Rattler, who had good and bad in this football game, that was good. Beautiful, beautiful throw to Juice Wells. 72-yard strike. It's a 2-point game again. Now, Antonio Williams on the return. A little trickery.
You got to protect the ball.
Loses the football game. Huge momentum swing. Gamecocks recover. Look at the shock on everyone's face. Rattler swings it to Wells. Makes a man miss. Whoop!
Get it.
Gets around and just efforts his way in.
Look at Coach Beamer.
I mean, look at the surprise and smile, I should say smile, on Shane Beamer's face as Shane Beamer has now back-to-back gotten wins over Tennessee and an upset and a win over Clemson in a game where Spencer Rattler had some very bad in the first half. That gave up a safety he didn't need to give up, threw a pick when they were about to score in the end zone. It felt like Spencer Rattler was going to cost them the game. He ended up coming back and being a huge part of why they won the game, AJ. Got to give a tip of the hat to his ability to just sort of stay in this throughout the course.
Oh, 100%. Listen, he had the first pass of the game was a pick six. And what that does to your psyche as a quarterback, it's tough. So for him to bounce back after that was huge. And then
a pick six and a safety, so that, forgive my math, that's 9 points. And then, like I said, late in the second half, they have an easy, he's just got to throw the ball away. And he tries to force it in the end zone.
Well, they were picked. Yeah, they were on about the 4-yard line, and he drops back to the 13-yard line before he throws it. I understand it was a deep crosser. They did a half roll type deal to where he half rolled to the right, They're trying to sell to the defense, hey, we're going to throw it to the right. And then they have somebody that started on the right go all the way to the backside of pylon on the left side. But he was double covered, and he absolutely underthrew the ball. And he threw it off his back foot. You can't do that. Live to play the next down. It wasn't third down. It wasn't fourth down. So live to play the next down. Keep the ball. No matter what, you end that possession with points. They can kick a field goal.
I was thinking of you when I saw him run to the sidelines because you immediately saw Beamer in his face going like this. And he's telling me, he's like, just throw it away.
Throw it away.
Throw it away. And I say this every week ever since you taught it to me. Take what the defense gives you. Eventually the defense will give you the game. Like sometimes an incompletion is a smart play, you know, and I compare it directly to a play we saw in the first half for Ohio State, even though they lost. C.J. Stroud rolled out, looked like he had a wide open receiver, but he did not throw the ball. And the announcer smartly pointed out he couldn't because it was a screen play. It would have been an illegal receiver downfield. He played smart quarterback. In this moment, I'm looking at Spencer Rattler every year, who I think is going to be smart, and I'm just looking at him thinking, what the hell are you doing? But he was able to come back and will them into this victory.
He was 100%. But listen, who deserves the credit for South Carolina is South Carolina's defense and special teams. They had their special teams had 2 huge turnovers. We saw the kickoff right there late in the game where it basically sealed the game for them. But they also had, after the safety, where Spencer Rattler took a bad safety, they kick it off. Clemson decides to get cute. They run a muddle huddle. Will Shipley catches the kickoff. He runs to a group of guys that's about 4 or 5 guys, and they act, you know, with their defense towards the kickoff coverage, turn around. They act like they're passing the ball around. Will Shipley takes off to the left. He hands it off to a guy that takes off to the right, number 26, and he ends up fumbling it. So, special teams for South Carolina having 2 huge turnovers controlled that game and helped seal that game, and a huge win for South Carolina.
South Carolina gets the win on rivalry week in a game that means so much. They move to 8-4, and Shane Beamer, like I said a moment ago, gets 2 straight significant recruiting wins. Like, there's just a moment when you say, look what we did. Everybody was in love with Tennessee. We knocked them out of any conversation. And by the way, if you're the Vols, you are looking right now at the chaos you've seen in front of you, and you just got to be kicking yourself saying could have had a chance, right?
Oh,
you look at South Carolina and the fact that they get this win now over Clemson, and I'm looking squarely at South Carolina saying that gives you momentum going into the next year. It's part of what is interesting about wins at the end of the season. Now, tonight, we've got a massive game. You can authenticate, you can hang out, you can stay right here in the ESPN app if that's where you're watching us, and you can watch all the football you could possibly get your hands on. But one of the best games we're going to see of the day is surely going to be USC taking on Notre Dame.
He stands in the pocket, in the middle, fires, touchdown Notre Dame! What a catch, Michael Mayer!
He's a good route runner. He's a big physical guy, so he uses his body really well. I think he catches the ball really well, and he creates space in his routes.
They do a good job of making it very challenging defensively to kind of earmark where the ball is being directed. The best tight end in the country to direct the ball to as well. Got 2 guys on him. One of the 2, if not both of them, have to get him on the ground.
DTR wants to throw. Throws it. Intercepted! Corey Foreman with the pick over the middle.
DBs that continue to find ways to make plays and get the ball back to their offense. They're disruptive. They play different coverages, and their ability to put pressure on the quarterback forces the quarterback to make poor decisions and get the ball out of his hands before maybe they want to.
They want the ball. They want to have takeaways. For us, Coach Freeman always emphasizes the ball is the most important thing. After every play, after every touchdown, hand the ball to the ref. That's what we're going to try to do, is have the ball as long as possible and as much as possible.
With all of the chaos we saw today, it only opens up more of a path for USC, because there was a real conversation about what would happen if Michigan-Ohio State was the game of our lives. What could happen? Could the ACC find a way to sneak into the conversation? All of the things that have been said are dead at this point. And if you're South Carolina, if you're USC, you are looking squarely at tonight and the Pac-12 championship game, and you're saying, AJ, we got a chance. We got a chance to get that 4 seed.
Oh, 100%. I mean, and I want to give a shout out to, it was Drew
And Drew Carter.
Drew. Hey, Drew.
Hey, Drew.
Clemson, they're in it, I tell you.
If you don't watch Rankings Reaction, you should. It's on Tuesdays. It's me, it's AJ McCarron, and it's Christine Williamson. Drew Carter, that works for the ACC Network, was one of our guests, and AJ was not very high that week on Clemson, and Drew was making an argument that Clemson could still get into the college football playoff. Today, we realized that moment died,
that's gone. So now to get to
AJ's texting
listen,
Drew,
yes, USC is sitting in prime position as we're watching. Oregon State's going to beat Oregon, so that knocks Oregon out. Now Washington has to win tonight to make it to the Pac-12 championship, and that'll be an interesting matchup. But if you're USC, if you win out, you're in. With all the other chaos that's gone around college football this year, you're in prime position. Take care of business. Do your job. Do what you're supposed to do. Go out, win these 2 games, and you're in the college football playoffs where you wanted to be when you started the season.
So, when I look at USC particularly, I think one of the things that we have to talk about here is the defense, because the committee has made it clear they want to see a better defensive effort. Here's the problem with that. The passing game particularly. Michael Mayer's a stud tight end. For anyone that hasn't watched Notre Dame, absolutely incredible. But what's interesting here is the Trojans have allowed 485 yards to tight ends this season. That's 14th worst in all of college football, right? So now all of a sudden they're facing one of the best tight ends in college football. This feels like it's a real opportunity. Like you're either going to sink or swim if you're USC, particularly because you will be asked not only to stop a star player, but the entire playoff committee is telling you, man, we got to see the defensive effort if you want that. So not only do I think they need to win, they need to come out and play solid defensively against a star to answer some of the questions.
The only thing I will say is USC has a bigger matchup from a passing standpoint and causing a problem for their defense versus Washington. If Washington wins and makes it to the Pac-12 championship, then what Notre Dame offers. Because Notre Dame's not a big throw the ball down the field team, right? They need to establish the run early and create some play action passes that allows their guys to get open down the field. They're not just going to spread out, drop back, and just eat you alive, throwing the football all over the field. So that I think that plays into the hands of USC's defense tonight, is the fact that Notre Dame's not a great passing attack team. But listen, Notre Dame's playing much better ball right now. Especially Drew Pine is playing much better now that he's played a couple weeks.
Much worse,
yeah. Well, he also
I'm not as nice as AJ is.
He also, listen, I like Drew. I know Drew and his family, but he also got thrown into a tough situation with Tyler Buckner being taken out in that Marshall game with a shoulder injury, and then him getting thrown in, not looking great. I think his first 2 passes of that game were picked off, and then he struggled. But him and Tommy Rees have found a rhythm. And the fact that Tommy Rees has found that rhythm with Drew Pine and knows what he's comfortable with and what he's not, I think we've seen Drew Pine grow before our eyes.
And I think Tommy Rees is a particularly talented coach, right? Teaches offense really well. Everybody raves about him. The people that have played for him rave about him. It was a significant moment when they were able to convince him to stay on the staff with Marcus Freeman. And to your point, I would challenge everybody. The easiest thing in the world to say about your favorite team's quarterback is this guy sucks. The real conversation you got to have is why. Like, it's rare that a player is just like awful. There's usually a bunch of events, and we see this in college and in the NFL. So you make a good point about the fact that it's gotten better. And if you're Marcus Freeman, you've got to be really encouraged. Now, Caleb Williams on the other side, there haven't been a lot of questions about it, but I think this was kind of interesting to me when you look at the numbers on third down and long, third down and 7 or more. Caleb Williams is averaging 10.5 yards per attempt. That's 8th in all of college football, right? So 3rd and long is actually really a great spot for Caleb. He has 3 touchdowns and no picks on 3rd and long. Like, the worst situation you get in him, especially knowing that he's got Addison as a weapon, like, it just feels like Caleb Williams has really blossomed this year into a superstar.
Well, yeah, I mean, listen, he's comfortable, right? It's not like he's coming into a whole new scheme like a lot of these guys out of the transfer portal. Like, Bo Nix was in a much tougher spot coming into this year because he's coming into a new offense and a whole new system. Caleb Williams has been a part of, Coach Riley, Lincoln Riley's offense. So he knows what to expect. He knows the play calls. He knows, hey, these signals coming in means this. Like, he's not second-guessing anything. So it's much easier to make that transition when you've been a part of that offense before and had experience playing in it. But he's playing well right now. They just can't have a slip-up. It seems like every year USC has some type of slip-up, and they had one earlier in the year versus Utah, but if you went out right now, you're in prime position.
You mentioned open receivers earlier. Caleb Williams has thrown 133 completions this year to what we qualify as wide open receivers. That's defined as no defender within 5 yards of a receiver. There is no quarterback in all of FBS that's feasted more with wide open receivers. So that's a credit to Lincoln Riley. That's a credit to those receivers. Mentioning Lincoln Riley, we got two coaches that come in first year with a lot of expectations. Who do you think so far has put themselves in a better situation long-term to be successful?
Between
Lincoln Riley and Marcus Freeman.
I mean, it's Lincoln Riley.
The only reason I asked is, like, you've made the point, too, before, like, Lincoln eventually is going to be recruiting against the Big Ten. He's got to get a bunch of wins now. Like, Marcus Freeman, slowly, steady, is just making things happen at Notre Dame. Like, you know, Notre Dame has a slightly different set of expectations. So, you know, it's like, as long as they're constantly in the conversation, it feels like people are happy.
100%. But I think, listen, I think it's going to be a tough road for USC from a recruiting standpoint, especially if Michigan keeps winning and when they transfer to the Big Ten. I mean, you got Michigan there. You still got Ohio State's going to get the top guys in the country. Like, you got Michigan State, who's kind of fighting to be in that conversation. Like, you got all these teams that are fighting for a lot of these guys, and a lot of these, you know, Big Ten teams that have been known to, all right, the guys that Ohio State gets and Michigan get, like, we take the next group of guys in that same area because they're all recruiting the same area. So that's also a tough get for USC. And now you allow Michigan, who has a ton of hype behind them. You allow Ohio State, who still has a bunch of hype behind the program and the history of it, to go out to California now and really, you know, pick guys from that area also because, hey, why would you go to USC when we've been winning the Big Ten? Like, nothing's going to change. So that also is a tougher road. But I think he's set up for success a lot more than Marcus Freeman.
I quickly want to update you on a Pac-12 result. Oregon State has beaten Oregon. I'll tell you why I cursed them, and we'll show you the highlights in a second. But first, game picks in this. I'll go first. I think USC is going to win this football game, and I think they're going to win it pretty convincingly. I like where Notre Dame's trying to go. I just think that, you know, it's a longer process. Transfer portal really helped USC. USC's got so much to play for. I think their offense is able to roll in this one. They win pretty easily. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I want Notre Dame to win this game, but I don't think they have enough firepower on offense. I think USC, just the firepower that they have from the offensive standpoint is just too much for Notre Dame to stick around.
Well, ask and you shall receive. I told you we were going to show you the highlights. We are there right now. A massive, massive implication outcome to this for everybody paying attention to it. Oregon taking on Oregon State. Number 9, Oregon. Ducks trying to get into the Pac-12 championship game. Bo Nix goes deep for Coda here, 44 yards. Absolutely, look at this.
That was an unbelievable catch.
Look, he squeezes it in the elbow. My guy's playing with a heavily taped hand.
It's lucky, but it's an unbelievable catch.
Better to be lucky than good when you get that one. We're going to pick it up now later in the same score. 4th and goal from the 1. We're going to take a little sneak. Beavers take the 10-7 lead.
Best playing football, other than victory.
Right, 100%. Now we pick it up in the second quarter. Bo drops back, throws it in there. Just an easy touchdown to Troy Franklin.
Yeah. What are we doing? DB playing so far off, that close to the goal line.
Bucks up 14-0 in the third quarter. Drops back, throws it over the middle. He's picked off. Regrettable throw. Oregon takes over. This is a 14-10 lead. You think, all right, everything's about to get out of hand. Jordan James punches it in here. The Ducks go up 21-10. You think everything's going to be just fine if you're an Oregon fan. Later in the third, same score. Noah Whittington takes it in from 5 yards out. Makes it 28-10. Starting to celebrate if you're up there in Oregon. Maybe there's a way. I'm talking to Heather Dinich about getting you in the college football playoff. And then Yep, you don't see a misprint there. It's 34-31.
Push them in, big
Newell
fella.
runs it in just
Let's
strong
go.
legs. Oregon State gets the 38-34 lead. Now Bo Nix rolls out, throws. Incomplete. Nothing there. Oregon State pulls out the win. Storm the field, fellas. Ladies and gentlemen, you get the win in the rivalry game. 38-34 is your final. Bo Nix 27-41, 327 and 2 touchdowns. Obviously, all eyes were going to be on Oregon. And you know what? This was my fault. I'm just going to admit it to you, AJ. This was my fault. I sat down with Heather Nimitz before the show. And I was like, Heather, I don't understand it. Everybody's saying that if USC wins out and wins the Pac-12 championship, why wouldn't they go to the college football playoff? And she said, right. And I was like, well, what about Oregon? She said, I don't think Oregon can do that. And so then I pulled the resume. We have a 20-minute conversation about everything Oregon's doing well. And she's like, you know what? I'm going to rewrite some things. You've talked me into it. Now, all of a sudden, bam, Oregon lays an egg. And it comes to what you just mentioned between USC and Notre Dame. These are the moments where you got it right in front of you. You got to go out and make sure that you do everything mentally right. It felt like Oregon took their foot off the gas a little bit. Then all of a sudden they couldn't get momentum.
Well, what I took from that was a waste of 20 minutes conversation.
I was hanging out with Heather.
And then
so
you created a whole bunch of work for Heather that ends up being a waste too.
Yeah,
so.
that's probably true. I probably owe Heather, coffee.
Listen, I got a bigger gripe, but a question. If you're Oregon, how is this a letdown year? Like,
I think so.
How? Like, you had prime position to be in the college football. Like, I understand the loss, opening game of the year versus Georgia. In Atlanta, you lose by 46. New head coach, Bo Nix's first time, in that system. I understand that. Okay? I'm fine with that. But to have the 2 losses that you've had against Washington at home, you weren't on the road, you were at home, you lose that game, and then you come out today when you're playing for your life to play in the college football playoffs. You're playing for your life and your chance to win a national championship. And you absolutely lay an egg again. Like, again, I don't understand it.
You blow an 18-point lead in that process, too. Like, that's stunning to me. The blowing of an 18-point lead is something in this situation because a couple of weeks ago, the committee basically told us, hey, we don't care that they lost early to Georgia.
Right.
They've been playing great since. And then all they've done is poop the bed since then. There was not a nice way to say that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's true, though. Like, especially from a defensive standpoint. Your head coach is a defensive guy. He just came from the #1 team in the country, and he was the defensive coordinator last year where they had the #1 defense in the country last year. So, like, how do you blow an 18-point lead, and how does your defense look that bad the past couple weeks? Like, I don't understand how they don't have more fight in them, and I'm not saying the kids don't have fight in them, but from a program standpoint, like, you can't allow these opportunities to slip away. Can't do it.
I don't disagree with you at all. And we're going to keep you updated, by the way. Texas A&M up 7-0 on LSU right now. That's in the first. We'll keep you updated on what that looks like. There's a ton of playoff implications to everything. But one thing I know, anytime we're talking about the playoffs, that means we're talking about star players. And when we're talking about star players, we're obviously talking about the Heisman. Here's what I know. USC has some history with really good quarterbacks, right? Like, you're seeing the comparison there. You look at the touchdown to interception ratio, one Carson Palmer, Matt Leinart, Caleb Williams. You look at completion percentage, you look at the titles that they were able to win. The book isn't written on Caleb Williams, but he's certainly trying to. The question is, how's he stack up in the mind of our QB1? So, figure, like we like to do now, we steal directly from your other show, The Wrap-Up, which you should check out with AJ and Scooby McGezza tonight at 11 p.m., where they do AJ's A-List. We just do a little twist on it. It's AJ's A-List, the Heisman edition, okay? So you're going to give us your top 5 Heisman candidates as of today. You feeling good about this?
Yeah.
Okay, and this would factor in what we've seen. So, obviously we have some games for some guys. We don't have some games for some guys. So before we even get your list, I do have to ask you, Blake Corum. I know Blake Corum, you and I have had a lot of conversations. Obviously, health kept him out today. Does that ruin his chance in your mind at a Heisman?
It does, because he missed the biggest game of the year. Right. And a couple weeks ago, I had Blake as my #1. But with him out against Ohio State, even though they had a huge win today, he didn't play. He only had 2 touches, and it was in the first possession. You can't put him in the conversation anymore.
Always comes back to those cliche Heisman moments. He lost his chance at one. So who do you have at number 5 on your list?
Number 5, for now, I got to bring back in Bryce Young. And for me to put Bryce there, listen, I know they've had 2 losses, but it's been a combined by a total of 4 points combined in both of those losses. So he's playing well today against Auburn. In the Iron Bowl, he's like 13 of 20, 260-something, and 4 touchdowns in the first half. So I think Bryce has worked his way back into that conversation.
And, again, in a year where there hasn't been somebody that's taken a hold of the Heisman, 2 losses, both on the road against top 10 teams according to the College Football Playoff Committee.
Yep.
All right, so who do you have at number 4 then on your list?
At number 4, somebody else who's back in the conversation too, and mainly because he's their whole team, right? It's Bo Nix for me. Listen, Oregon's offense goes through Bo Nix. He had his worst game of the year other than, against Georgia in the first game of the year. But last week against Utah, he still had a passing touchdown, but he's playing well tonight as we speak. And so I got to put Bo Nix back in the conversation.
Look, and I've just become such a fan of watching what Bo is doing this year. I love this. All right, so number 3 on your list.
Number 3.
Oh, the quarterbacks here. Going all the way. Oh, Stetson?
I got to go Stetson.
Oh, man, let's say one of us on this set may have a little bit of may put a little juice in that at the beginning of the year so he can move up.
Listen, he was 5 of 10 for 23 yards in the first half versus Georgia Tech today. Came out second half. They finally let him open it up and throw it. But he's got Georgia undefeated still. All right, they won the national championship last year because of him. So until somebody knocks Georgia off, Stetson's the reason that they're there. He's the most consistent guy right now in college football, and he has his team undefeated.
And his chance to go out there and make an SEC championship statement towards the Heisman could be his Heisman moment. All right, so he's at 3. That means you got 2 other guys. Who'd you got at number 2?
And I know some people aren't going to like this, but for me,
Preach.
I still think it's Caleb. I don't think he's number 1 right now because, listen, they have a loss versus a Utah team earlier in the year. So I still think he has a couple games. He's got tonight versus Notre Dame, and then he's going to have the Pac-12 championship where he can change people's minds, right? Especially me and for my list. But right now he hasn't done enough to just say he's the outright number 1.
I felt so much so watching him play against UCLA. For as much as we talk about C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young, deservedly so, Caleb Williams is in that same conversation, and he's not even draft eligible for another year.
Yep.
He's special to watch, for sure. Okay, so who's at the top of the list?
Number 1, it's got to be Dougie, Max Duggan.
Doug E. Fresh at the top.
Listen, they're up big tonight at halftime and versus Iowa State. Max has been everything for this offense. He literally, Garrett Riley leans on him to get success for their offense, push the ball down the field. I think he's playing the best ball in the country out of anybody right now. And until somebody, whether it's Iowa State, which it doesn't look like tonight, or it's Kansas State or Texas in the Big 12 championship, if nobody knocks him off, I think Max has a really good shot at winning this thing.
You've been riding the Max train all year consistently. I think this is really deserved. It makes a lot of sense. Also, no C.J. Stroud. That's a development that happens after a game like today. Now, let's do a little blind resume test here. What we're doing is we're taking a look at a quarterback. This is through 11 games, so this is coming in to this week's actions. We're going to look at the quarterback on the left. Those are the stats in 2022. For a quarterback we don't know, 10-1, 85.4 total QBR, 65% completion, 3,480 yards, and 33 passing touchdowns. On the right, you see somebody that was a Heisman contender or winner, we don't know, in 2021 after 11 games, same stats. So you see the similarities. And I'm going to guess that the guy on the left, only because of the 33 number, is Caleb Williams. I think it's Caleb Williams. That out of all these guys, to me, it's got to be Caleb, maybe Max, but I think passing touchdowns, it feels like Caleb.
So I would say Caleb's on the left. I don't know.
What do you think?
I don't know who's on the
Bryce
right.
or Kenny Pickett? Pickett last year.
Oh, wow.
Oh, Bryce. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Woo! Last year's winner, this year's number 2 on the Heisman list here for AJ's A-list. So shows you how special what's happening right now for Caleb is.
Yeah, 100%. And listen, that's why I said he's still got some games to go to catch Bryce on passing touchdowns compared to last year. So he has moments, his Heisman moments tonight, Pac-12 championship leading up to it.
Yeah, could come tonight. We'll see. We don't have to wait any longer for this highlight.
Let's go.
The Iron Bowl. We picked this one up, tied at nothing. Ashford running 24 yards. Nifty little run here early on. Play goes under review. It is indeed ruled a touchdown. Felt like that was probably the right call.
Yeah.
Auburn gets on the board first, 7-0. Never say War Eagle too soon, though. Now Bryce Young rolling out, looking. Why look any farther when I can go myself? Bryce Young takes it in. Alabama ties the game, 7-7. Now, Young, dropping back, finding McClellan. Look at that. Makes everybody miss, takes it inside, makes it look easy. Bama goes up 14-7. Now Ashford dropping back, looking for Johnson. 20-yard touchdown.
That's the best throw he's had all year.
That was a beautiful throw. Really nice job getting that catch and saying hi to the cameraman.
Bam.
Dangerous being there on the sidelines. Now Young gonna find Ja'Cory Brooks. Look at that adjustment. I don't know. AJ's making a face like, what in the hell just happened? Alabama extends the lead to 28-14. 49-27 is your final score. This was a game where Bama felt like they were rolling away early. They were running away, I should say, roll tide. They were running away with it early. Auburn tried to make it a little close, get a little suspense to it. In all likelihood, it looks like the Cadillac-Williams era comes to an end here with a loss in the Iron Bowl. Alabama now has to sit and wait and see if enough chaos can happen in front of them to find their way into the college football playoff. I'm not surprised by this outcome. I think Alabama needed to win and win big.
Yeah, I mean, and they had that's still a good win.
It's the Iron Bowl.
Yeah, yes, exactly. I talked about it earlier on College Game Day Radio. Listen, for whatever reason, it doesn't matter. I was on the best team in the country in 2009 when we ended up winning the national championship, beating Texas, but Auburn was horrible that year, and the Iron Bowl at Auburn came down to a last-minute drive for us to win that game. So it doesn't matter the records when it comes to this game, but for Bama to win convincingly and to have a good game today is something they needed. Now you just need a little chaos to happen with USC. Really and truly is what it comes down to now. And you'll find yourselves back in the conversation.
We'll do a deep dive on some of this college football playoff conversation in a little bit on the show. All I'll say quickly is that the committee has told us time and time again that they consider rivalries to be difficult matchups. So anybody that ever rolls their eyes at the concept of, well, this was a rivalry game, the committee's spoken on how they feel about it. Doesn't really matter how anybody else feels about it. They've told us. In the meantime, one team that didn't have to keep it close at all is TCU. All eyes were going to be on TCU, who every single week seems to give us a heart attack, but not this week. You were just bragging about Max Duggan. Look at this throw. Wide open.
Wide open.
Spivey for a 19-yard touchdown. TCU with the early 7-0 lead. Now, Miller. Do what Miller does. Living the Miller life.
Kendra Miller.
Look at that. Spin move gets himself into the end zone. 25-yard touchdown. That makes it 17-0. He's just an aggressive, hard runner that is fun to watch when he has the football in his hand.
Yeah, he's explosive. He's one of their biggest threats on offense.
Next play, Iowa State with the possession of the ball. Decker's pass is intercepted by Bradford.
What are we looking at?
Bradford, what's he going to do? Swiggity swooty. He goes for the booty. Big touchdown. TCU goes up 24-0. In a year where I feel like every week I've had to hold my breath to figure out what in the hell is going on at the end of a game, that was not the case this week. Iowa State gets absolutely thrashed. TCU makes a statement by winning 62-14, and now they sit back, they hang out, and they await the Big 12 championship game. No matter what happens, in a year where we have waited for TCU to fall or fail, they every week have found a way to win. This week, they came out and they dominated. It was fun to watch. It was a big statement by TCU. I think everybody looks at it and says, heck yeah, like this is a fun, explosive football team.
Oh, listen, I mean, their offense hasn't been the question all year.
Right.
I mean, their offense has come out and played, brought them back multiple games to win by double digit. being behind double digits. So
yeah, and Iowa State's not really going to threaten your defense much. I get that.
But it's their defense is the biggest question mark. Like their defense for the past 5 weeks up till until today, they haven't shown up till the second half. So they finally show up today. But moving forward, whether they play Kansas State in the Big 12 championship or they play Texas, they need to show up in the first half in that game and really, set themselves and create some dominance early. But I tell you what, TCU is rolling right now, and they look good.
Yeah, well, big win for them. In the meantime, you're watching the College Football Show. AJ McCarron, Jason Fitz. You can authenticate. Stay here all night and watch all the college football you want. We're going to take a live look in for you right now between LSU, Texas A&M. I'm a lover of chaos, AJ. But even I am starting to have my head explode at all of the different possibilities because right now A&M is up in this game. But we are getting a review on whether or not this is a touchdown. Certainly looks like it could be.
Touchdown.
Yeah, it looks like a touchdown to me.
But of course,
ruling on the field was that it was short.
So indisputable.
We are, as you can see, just into the second quarter, and this game is 7-0. A&M is up on LSU. So obviously a lot of angst over this call.
Here we go.
After video review, it is a touchdown.
Touchdown.
Touchdown, Tigers.
So I mean, listen, if you're LSU.
So John Emery goes ahead for a 4-yard
I tell you what, the thing that gets me is
when AJ's like, well, I tell you what,
the SEC this year has just been so confusing, right? Like,
refusing to go down.
You have teams that are ranked high, that have big wins, and then they have a loss, and it's almost like that one loss just absolutely kills the team. And then they come out the next week and have a really bad loss, like Ole Miss. Ole Miss was riding high, loses to Alabama. They thought they were going to win, playing at home. They lose a close game, and they turn around the next week and get mollywopped by Arkansas.
Yeah.
So the SEC has been real confusing this year and something that's been very entertaining.
Hey, AJ! What time is it?
Bruh time.
It's time for Bruh, delivered by Pizza Hut. You know what we're going to do. We're going to show you some of the moments throughout the course of the day that made us say, Bruh. And we start with this one. Rivalry week is not about having split loyalties. Look at this fan. How are you going to do that?
House divided. You know, you might have a kid that goes to Michigan, and you might have a kid that goes to Ohio State.
Oh, that's a really fair and reasonable take. I just like to think he was hedging both sides of the bet so he could talk trash to whoever he wanted. AJ's probably much more correct on the way that whole thing plays out. Little interesting to wear both, but hey, if it's a house divided, I guess we can excuse that. Let's move to the next play. And this one, Georgia Tech, trying to prevent the touchback here, getting a little creative, trying anyway.
Come on, bruh.
It's an A for effort, I guess. I mean, tough to get everything to stop, but you had it. You had it.
Yeah, all he's got to do is just toss it back.
Well, this was a great fake out for the announcers.
Waltzes into the end zone untouched. Cowboys touchdown. What a start to this second quarter.
Looks like he might have hurt his hamstring on that.
Hit him with it.
Fakes you out.
Oh, did you ever fake somebody out in an end zone celebration?
No, you got penalized back in my day if you celebrated.
Oh, good work by him. We were all fooled by that one. And a nice play on that touchdown. Moving next to Clemson. Little trick play here. Trying. Who's got it? Well, no, nobody has it. And
Maruski.
Oh, bruh. All that work for nothing.
Horrible.
And, of course, go back to Georgia Tech here. He tried. You know, you got to get the ball, then you got to kick the ball. It's not that easy.
I mean, what are we doing, fella? It was a bad day for special teams for Georgia Tech.
It certainly was. And one more here, West Virginia getting in on every year we see somebody that decides they're going to celebrate too early, and this is another one of those instances. Got it? Oh, no. Oh, man. I don't. That's going to be shown again at practice, and that's not going to feel good.
What is he looking at?
Oh, that is a little bruh delivered by Pizza Hut. Tackle him! All right, let's take you live to Notre Dame taking on USC, the game we've been talking all night about. Hanging out with you.
See something in the coverage. He's audibling.
Caleb Williams drops back, moves up in the pocket, looking around to make the play, throws it late. Oh, big touchdown, big move, bad tackling.
Knocks him in. I mean, that's big for USC. Opening drive of the game to go down, you run 5 minutes off the clock, and then go down and score. It's what you want to see.
Can I just, I'm going to piss off Pac-12 fans everywhere, but look at all the empty seats. Just look at those. All the empty seats. I don't get it. Your team's playing for the playoffs. Your team's playing for everything. In a rivalry game that's supposed to mean a bunch, places a third full. A third's an exaggeration. That stuff just drives me crazy.
That's L.A. for you, though, right?
Yeah, no, 100%.
I mean, because the Rams won the Super Bowl last year, and they can't even pack their place out.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that, like, I grew up on the West Coast. I grew up not understanding why people cared so much about college football until I moved to the South, essentially. And then it was like, oh, I get it. It's part of culture. But these are the moments that I'm like, if you're Lincoln Riley, you're trying to build something like Pete Carroll-esque, right? And, like, it's going to take that to get people excited about it. 7-0 is your score in that one. USC opening drive results in a touchdown. This is exactly what USC's offense wants to do.
Oh, 100%. If you're Notre Dame, you got to go out and get some type of points now. In your opening drive, you have to be able to go out and I don't care if it's 3 points, touchdown, whatever. You got to get some points on this drive to just at least stall the momentum that USC has.
And you know, I think of this often, and by the way, we'll get you back to the live looking, but there's no freebies around here. We're not going to show their commercials on our show. Come on. But I think often of AJ early on in this show, this fall, when we were hanging out, and you've told the story multiple times, I know, but like being at the Swamp and knowing you needed to get points early. I watched games today in rivalry atmospheres thinking about the fact that, like, the crowd plays such a part. And early in the Ohio State-Michigan game, the crowd was disrupting Michigan. It took Michigan going on a roll to get the crowd to die down. The crazy part about it is once that crowd dies down, once you lose momentum in a rivalry game, it is so difficult to get it back. That's why, to your point, I think Notre Dame has to come out and not only control the football, they have to control the football and get some points out of it.
Well, especially what really kills it is when you're playing at home, right? And the opposing team is the one that comes out and you know, kills that momentum that the crowd has. And if you kill the energy that the crowd has and you're playing on the road, like, that's what you want as an opposing team. So that's what Michigan did today versus Ohio State. Ohio State opened up the game and drove straight down the field, made it look easy, like they were just going to do that for the rest of the game and run away with it. And then Michigan just slowly kept staying in the game. And then late in the game, when you really need the crowd, is when Michigan knocked the crowd completely out.
The biggest point of that was a 4th down attempt in the first half, up 10-3. Ohio State throws the ball, has it, doesn't quite complete it.
Yep.
Instead of, it looked like they were going to go up 17-3 and totally change that game. And all of a sudden, Michigan got momentum, couldn't do anything about it. Now, it brings us to a conversation about what we've seen today. I want you guys to see the top 10 as it stood coming into the day. This is obviously coming into the day. Now, we know that Georgia is going to play for a conference championship. We now know that Michigan is going to play for a conference championship after just absolutely wailing on Ohio State. TCU, LSU, USC, you see the numbers there, but you see some losses along the way. And it creates a really interesting situation because it could all get chaotic. I'm going to presume that Georgia beats LSU for a second. I'm going to presume that Michigan beats either Purdue or Illinois in just an ugly reminder that they need to get rid of divisions in the Big Ten when it comes to the championship game. And I'm going to presume that TCU for a second wins their conference championship. If that happens, you got a 4th seed. And now you're going to be looking squarely at USC saying, boy, you better get it done. Because if USC loses anywhere in this, there is a very real scenario that gets Alabama back into the playoff. I mean, we saying that? We feel like
Listen, I've been saying it.
Look, he has.
I've been saying it. Like, everybody thought I was crazy and I was being a homer and all this. No, I'm just watching football. And from a guy that has played the game since he was 3 years old, I'm just letting you know that the committee thinks that this is still one of the best teams in the country. And they show that by putting them as far up as they are with 2 losses. And they've been that high up for a while now. The past couple weeks, they've been up there. So I think if USC slips up and loses, like, you're guaranteeing Alabama pretty much to be in there if Georgia beats LSU.
Well, you guys see the graphic there, and I want to point out one misleading thing about this graphic. And I'm not saying this is right or wrong the way they do it. I just know how they do it. And I talked to Heather Dinich about this earlier today. The College Football Playoff Committee doesn't consider where a team was ranked when you play them. They consider where the team is now because they consider that to be a bigger body of work. So what's really weird about the Alabama schedule is you see there, they got to win at number 20. They got to win versus number 17. They got a 1 or a 3-point loss at number 6, right? They got to win over number 24. You see all those ranked games there. But according to the current college football playoff rankings today, right now, as we sit, they only have 2 ranked wins. Ole Miss at 20, Texas at 23. And they have 2 ranked losses, Tennessee at 10, LSU at 5. Ole Miss is likely going to fall out of the top 20 or top 25 after losing the Egg Bowl. I don't know what to do with an Alabama team that, frankly, I look at and I watch and, like, look, I say this to you every week. You had to bet your house on it. You're betting your fortune on Nick Saban and Bryce Young or the other guy. You're going to bet on Nick Saban and Bryce Young. But what do you do with the team that only has 1? Because, like, USC right now, and look, I have notes. I'm that guy. I sat there today and I was like, all right, let me chart all this. USC has ranked wins today over Oregon State, UCLA. If they win tonight, we'll add Notre Dame to that with 1 ranked loss to Utah. USC could end up with the most impressive resume of any of these teams by the time they get in, and that just doesn't match what we see on the field. So I don't know what to do with that. Like, you don't see any numbers there, but the committee has told us Oregon State is currently number 21. They're going to move up after beating Oregon. UCLA is number 18. Notre Dame is number 15. They're going to play a Pac-12 championship game against probably a ranked team. We'll see what that looks like too. Like, it's just the committee's got to value that.
Well, the thing that pisses me off about this committee, all right, and we'll hit on it more Tuesday in our college rankings reaction show. But the thing that pisses me off the most is, if we're not going to pay attention to what the teams were ranked when we played them, then what the hell are we ranking these teams for? Like, if we're not going to say, hey, Bama beat Ole Miss when they were ranked at number 11, and then they, lost to Tennessee, who was number 6 at the time when Bama was 5th. Like, then what the hell are we doing the rankings for? Because it makes no sense whatsoever. It's the biggest gripe I have with the committee and the whole ranking system, because you're basically saying, hey, all the weeks that we've had these shows, the rankings mean absolutely nothing. We don't know why you watched, why you tuned in and took your time to watch our stupid show. Like, it doesn't make any sense if we're not going to go off that route.
Well, and look, part of the reason that I love covering the College Football Playoff Committee is because it's so analytical. My mind understands it. Part of the reason I think the show on Tuesday is entertaining is because AJ comes at it from like, hey, I know football and I know what I see, right? What's weird to me is right now, according to today, this does not factor in the results of today, obviously. Coming into this week's action, there were 5 ranked teams in the SEC: Ole Miss, Tennessee, Bama, LSU, Georgia. So 4 of those really good, right? The 5th one, man. There are 6 ranked teams from the Pac-12: Oregon, USC, Washington, Utah, UCLA, Oregon State. So it comes back to something one of our other hosts, Christine Williamson, always says. I feel like the committee has just sort of left the runway there where they're like, hey, we think highly of the Pac-12, so no matter how this works, we'll put the Pac-12 champ in. Like, it feels like it's a very safe way to do it. I just don't know where the line is, because by the numbers, USC to me would if USC wins out, they're clearly the 4th best team in the country. They belong in.
Yeah.
If you had to bet your house today on a neutral field, you had to bet your house, your kid's retirement fund, every dollar you have in the bank on a neutral field today between Alabama and USC, who you taking? And I think if we asked the 13 committee members that, they'd say Bama. But Where do you put what the book says you're supposed to do versus what the football mind says?
I have an issue with that, Fitz. I really do, because we're saying as a committee and as a rankings reaction show that, hey, all these shows before this last one really don't mean anything. It's just smoke. We're just blowing smoke up in the air. And I can't stand that, because then there's no reason to have rankings at all until the end of the year. Let's just let everybody play out their season. We'll see what the records are, and then we'll rank everybody in the end. Like, that's what we're saying right now.
You're not wrong about that principle, but as somebody that hosts that show, please watch every Tuesday. We love doing it. Ultimately, I've said for a long time, I feel like it's less for actual results and more for just entertainment. In the meantime, we hope that we've entertained you. This has been the College Football Show. Stick around. The wrap-up coming up tonight. Scooby Mageza will be sitting here. He'll be sitting with AJ. You don't want to miss it. That's at 11 p.m. tonight. In the meantime, for everybody behind the scenes that makes this show happen, we appreciate you guys giving us your time, your fandom every single Saturday. He's AJ McCarron. I'm Jason Fitz. This is the wrap-up. No, this isn't the wrap-up. It's College Football Show. I don't even know the name of the show. What are we doing?